I'm Alexis. I am a longtime community activist in LA, San Francisco, just making sure that trans people have their equal rights. I think that when I transitioned, there wasn't services for people like me. I couldn't go into a clinic. I couldn't access, a shelter. I couldn't access, things because of my identity. And so I was able to be like, hey, wait a minute, I want to be a voice. And I started to really be that voice, like say, hey, wait a minute, how about the trans people? Or how about these people? Or how about those people? And becoming more vocal, and through that, it's where I've been able to like gain empowerment and like develop my own self-worth to get to the place where I'm at. Being trans here in the world, in America, it's difficult. We deal with so much BS. We deal with a lot of BS, and it's like not only from the BS from society, but even internal stuff before we even deal with the outside stuff.
Yeah.
And so not everybody is going to be that advocate, right? So if I was given that like talent to like public speak, if I was given if I'm passionate about something and I'm able to vocalize it, it's like, why not be that advocate for people? I mean, I remember when I started transition, all the older girls were like, well, you need to go do this. You need to go get pumped. You need to go get, your implants. You need to go get your silicone booty. I mean, all of these things. And it was like, at what point was it like, well, where's my individuality? Even though I admire that and I admire the beauty that comes with like cosmetic surgery. But for me, it was like, no, I'm following the herd. Like, I'm not, I want to be a leader of the pack. I don't want to be following because that's what the generations of my...
If you wanted to follow the herd, you would have never transitioned in the first place,
exactly, right? Totally. And so for me, it was like I got to a point, and the way how I expressed my individuality was like getting my tattoos, and my tattoos were an expression of who I was at the time, and as I started to grow into myself, into my womanhood, it was like each tattoo has like a specific meaning in my life, like a diary. And so when I got like my really large piece, which is my dragon, I remember my uncle was like, that's permanent, right? And I was like, really? I was like, I thought it was, yeah, right? Oh, I thought I went through all that pain for it to be washed away, and in the first bath I took or so.
Right.
So till this day, I make it out of respect, right? When I go to my grandparents' house to really cover my artwork, just out of respect. When I'm with my mom, my mom's
for their comfort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
After my mom like explaining to her, because she's like, why a dragon?
Yeah.
And do we have time for me to tell you the dragon story? So the dragon story, I must have been like 21, 22, and I was, me and my friend Ivy, were going to a club in Hollywood. So we had parked the car, on a side street, on Highland, very close to Hollywood Boulevard. Actually, we had parked closer to Sunset, actually. And we were young, like I said, 21, and we had not realized that area where we parked was labeled by the LAPD as a sex working zone for non-trans women. And we were walking, and all of a sudden, like we saw a bike like coming like straight towards us, and it ended up being the cops on bikes, LAPD on bikes.
Huh.
And they got off their bikes, and they're like, get against the wall. And we both looked at each other. Like, we even looked back thinking that they were like talking to somebody else. So they the two guys on bikes push us against the wall, and they spread your legs, just, really just inappropriate, unnecessary. We're two girls, two
LAPD or?
LAPD, yeah. Should I say that? With my name? Whatever. Yeah. But I just needed to say that because I have in the past and currently work with some amazing LAPD officers that are, about...
There's good cops in that class.
Yeah, exactly. So anyhow, so these cops were put your hands against the wall. And so well, what do you do, right? You put your hands up on the wall. Just saying some really unnecessary,
Right.
inappropriate, degrading, humiliated, derogatory, words. I mean, basically, we were being victims of sexual harassment and sexual violence, I would call it. And so then they started to like massage, and then as they started to go down, then they went down to the goodies. And what did what in their mind or how they were interpreting me visually wasn't how I was built physically.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden they were like, and just said some really bad things. And then they were like, you're a bunch of dragons, aren't you? Bunch of dragons. And I guess the code word drag queen, or transgender. Right. So after not only the humiliation of the two the bike cops, then all of a sudden the cops in the car came, and over the loudspeaker, then they started to communicate with the cops on the bikes, and it was just said over the loudspeaker. And we were on Hollywood Boulevard, we were on Hollywood and Highland, and it was just, then people started to like look. So we were basically like humiliated. Yeah. Right? So we didn't even end up going out that night. We just turned around, got into the car, cried for a minute. We like hugged each other, and we're 21. We're still processing like.
Yeah,
So we didn't even really say anything about it, and then many moons later, I went through this whole very briefly went through this little fantasy stage and wanted to know about dragons and really wanted to explore that. So after doing some research, I found out that dragons have no gender. Right? Oh. That they're nor male or female.
Okay.
And so I just started to look at that, and I was like, wait a minute, maybe I am a dragon. Maybe I have no gender, and maybe I'm nor male nor female. And just starting to explore what that looks like, and just was like, oh my God, I am a dragon. So instead of that, that cop taking that power, by calling me that and thinking that it was a derogatory term, right? I was able to switch it in my mind.
And make it positive.
And make it a positive thing.
Empowering.
Exactly. So now.
When you look at a dragon's claws and, fire and, fangs.
Fierce, right?
Fierce.
And strong and magical and spirit, mysterious creature that people just gravitate toward, but fear. So it only seemed natural that I was going to put this on my body, not to turn the page on that one experience, because I could tell you how cold it was. I could tell you what I was wearing. I could tell you so many things about that one night. And there's times where, it's funny because where I live at and where I work at, where the Transgender Law Center's office is in LA, I passed through there. I passed through that same.
All the time, huh?
I passed through the wall that have made me stand, and it's funny. It doesn't have that much power anymore. I've been able to overlook it, and sometimes when I see the tattoo, it brings me. There's times where it brings me back to that, or, but it doesn't have that much weight on me.
Yeah.
So that's the tattoo. The background of my beautiful blue greenish dragon. It means a lot to me. This really tattoo. It's going back to the wisdom and all of this. And I'm a firm believer that I have an old soul. That my soul has walked this planet many of times. Mm-hmm. And I really feel that this lifetime, my what I have gone through in my 32 years has definitely, I think, this is the healing time of my soul, because there's so many times where it's I think about it, it's why did I go through this? Why me? And it's at the end of the day, as I'm getting older, it's well, why not me? Why would I choose what I have been through on anybody else? So it's if the universe has really felt that I'm capable of overcoming my hurdles, right? Why would I desire it to be somebody else?
Who can't take it? Who would break?
Who would break? Exactly.
I'm so happy that we finally got you on the show.
Oh,
I'm really glad you actually came to visit finally, because I really missed seeing you in the office. It feels weird you not being here.
it was nice to be back in my little space and on my desk, and to just have coworkers, around, and I work with some amazing coworkers. And I was, since the moment I think like my first or second week, Mila had told me about the podcast and like, oh, it would be nice to, for you to come. And, and I'd been living in San Francisco for a minute, and I just never made it out to Concord. And I'm really happy that I did,
Yeah.
I really am. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Alexis Rivera. I've known Alexis since I was 18, and she was not just a sister to me, she was an inspiration to me. A lot of the work that I do in the community now, I do because of Alexis. She taught me that if I wanted to see change in my community, I needed to be a part of that change and work for that change. And a lot of what I do today is because of Alexis. That's all I'm going to say, because now I start crying. Thank you.
I remember in 2009, Transgender Leadership had a state summit down in San Diego at UC San Diego. Alexis called me the next morning, the day before, to make sure you're at the airport. Your flight leaves at this time. And so when we got down there, she didn't stop. She made sure that the program, the opening ceremonies was a great opening ceremony. The next day, she was up early the next morning, make sure all the panelists were together, and make sure I was at my panel discussion on time. So, Alexis is a wonderful person. She has a sense of humor that many people didn't realize that she had. Alexis could make you laugh with whatever joke she told, because she was so into it, you had to get into it. So that's how I remember Alexis. Alexis, we love you. You can always be with us.
Hi, I'm Tim, and for some people who still know my name, I'm here to say something to Alexis Spears, actually, because I believe that she's here in the room with us. Alexis, I just realized that I had taken a picture of your tattoo on your back, and sold that picture as the first picture in our show in 2007. Just took me till today to figure out that it was your back. I think you would enjoy knowing that. And sorry that we started out with a rocky start. I tend to do that to people I don't know. But we got to talk soon, and we quickly figured that I had already spoken to you in LA years before, when I had to reach out to someone at the Highland Hospital, because I had been working to get condoms available at our shelter, and they only gave us expired condoms. As a peer educator, I didn't put up with that. And I happened to talk to you, and you really helped us get that policy changed for the first time. And so I want to thank you for that. And just thank you for all the work you've been doing with us the last few years. Thank you.
Opposite direction. I'm Corinne for now. I met Alexis about 7 years ago. I was having a little difficulty finding resources, and I was having some trouble at work. And I'd gone to a couple of conferences, and I met Alexis at one of those conferences. And she kind of took a shine to me, and I still don't know to this day why, and swept me into her group of friends. And you are all a real bunch of friends. Some of you I know personally, some of you I've only seen around. At the time I was living in Humboldt County and there were no resources out there. Alexis helped me find resources. Later, I worked professionally, well, semi-professionally through a leadership council, and I learned about advocacy, and she was one of the greatest teachers I ever had. Alexis was also my friend, and a very good friend. She called me out of the clear blue when I had trouble, and I had told her, and this was not long after meeting her, about the problems I was having at work, just to talk to me. And she was very kind to me. Later, I met her again at a conference in San Francisco, the CAPI conference, Prize Incorporated. At the time, I was serving on Humboldt County's Pride board. And it was at the social afterwards. Alexis taught me many things, mostly through her sense of humor. And I remember she walked up to me, got a rather wicked smile on her face, looked around the room and said, "Corinne, are we the only trannies here?" And that taught me that day that tranny wasn't a bad word at all. I mean, it could be ours. And I believe that it is mine now because of what Alexis taught me. Alexis came all the way to Humboldt County to help us with the help us with the Humboldt Health Council, and to help us to establish the first transgender health center in Humboldt County. As a matter of fact, in most of the north, anywhere much north of the Golden Gate, it's the first. And I'm very proud to have known Alexis and have worked with her for so long. And yet, it wasn't long enough. Alexis, wherever you are, I miss you. We all miss you.
My name is Mila. I'm the Community Programs Manager here at SF Center, and I worked with Alexis for a couple of years at the Transgender Law Center. And Alexis is a really good friend, and I miss her a lot. I know that her legacy is going to live on each and every one of you. I just want you to always remember that she was strong and she was never afraid to be who she is. We love you. Thank you.
My name is Jake Finney. I probably don't know a lot of the folks here. I live in LA. I wasn't even sure if I was going to speak today, but I just love this memorial for Alexis. I came into this space, into this center, and I realized this is one of the first times I ever really connected with her. We were much more than friends. We dated, we were good friends, we were a lot to each other in many different ways. And I was with her when she passed a little over a week ago. And I really love this memorial event because I don't think she would be upset or say you didn't do something nice this way, because I think that this, to me, really captures Alexis. Like in her last days, she was still talking about trans rights. And, you know, and Transgender Law Center was like in her heart. She was Transgender Law Center and Transgender last time I was her, up to the last day. And I wanted to thank you. I had never listened to the Transponder radio interview before. I knew it was out there and I hadn't listened to it. I knew the story about the dragon. And I love it because I had always, one of the ways we first started flirting and connecting with each other is because we both really like tattoos and I really liked her dragon. And I had always wanted a blue dragon on my shoulder. And so I talked to her, where'd you get that? And that was just a talking point. But I would never get it because I'm like, well, I can't have the same tattoo as her. That would be ridiculous. Like, she would just never, nobody would let me live that down. But this is the first time I've heard it in not much detail from her voice, and so that's really special to me. I'm really happy to be here. Maybe I will get the tattoo now. But, yeah, no, it's really, really beautiful event. Thank you.
I had the pleasure of coming down here in a plane. Cecilia dropped me off at the airport, and lo and behold, back in 2007, she was sitting there waiting for the San Francisco plane like I was. And I sat down next to her and we looked at each other, looked at what we were doing, we looked at each other, and we said, and she's like, aren't you that guy who had the camera attached to his face? And I was like, yeah. And are you that person who was up there like 5 times during the event? Yeah. And we connected, we talked, and we cackled. That was a great description of her act. She was a strong youth advocate, strong everything, amazing. And I have this burning feeling, we all should hang out a lot more. Because when you find out that your friend is dying and you find out through Facebook and you don't touch base with anybody, it's hard. Sometimes I feel like I've cut myself off from the community when I know that you're still here. I'm just, going to school for meetings and sorry. And she is still here. I think she lives in all of us. She lives in our memories. She lives in the air. She lives in the water that we drink, the air that we breathe. She is in all of us.
My name is, I'm going to try to keep myself together, but my name is Kathleen. And I met Alexis probably in about 2003, I'm thinking 2003. She was already a case manager at Children's Hospital, and I was the newest member of the team. And it was almost immediately upon meeting her that I felt like there was this almost magnetic draw that I had to this person, human being. And we became very close very fast. And I think the two of us didn't quite understand what the connection was, why we loved each other so much, why we needed each other so much. And I know that she was very involved with the trans community. But one thing I have to say about her is that she went far beyond that community. Her love, who she was as a person, it just transcended into all levels. Being a positive woman, which was something that I disclosed to her many, many years ago. It was the piece of her that I felt she kept very tight. And for me, being someone who was positive as well, being able to have somebody that understood me on so many different levels, the fact that she was trans and that I wasn't, it just didn't matter. It almost, on some levels, I was more fascinated with her. But the fact that we could relate to each other, two people that could be more different, could relate to each other, and comfort each other, and give each other, advice, and just being a friend, being a sister. She was that and so much more for me. We worked together for a short period of time at Children's Hospital, maybe a year. But for me, when I left, I was living in LA, when I left and moved back up here to San Francisco, that relationship, it continued. And I know that she meant a lot to everyone in this room. She meant a lot to so many different people. She was an amazing person, a powerful person. I was so proud for her to be my friend. I was so proud for her to be my friend. My mother's here with me, and Alexis was a person that I've shared my bed with, that I broke bread with. She's somebody that I've held hands with. I brought home to my family without any fear of judgment. She could be who she was, and she was proud of who she was. She made me feel less fearful of judgment from others. It broke my heart, and it breaks my heart to know that she could help so many, and that she could be there for so many people, but it was just hard for her to really just take care of herself. I was here with Alexis when she went to the hospital in San Francisco, and I remember being so angry with her. My mother was there too, and I remember being so angry with her because I knew that she wasn't adhering to her medicine. I knew that she wasn't doing that. I just didn't understand. I didn't understand. But everyone has their path. Everybody has their coping mechanisms. I would just have to accept Alexis for Alexis and let her do her. Everyone knows who knows her. She's stubborn. She's stubborn. Even when she's looking at death in the face, she's not going to die. And she's not. She refuses to leave any of our hearts and leave any of us. I just think that everything happens perfectly the way it's supposed to. And as sad as I am that she's gone, she's left so much for so many people. And I think that her passing and the struggles that she's had to go through, it's taught me. It's definitely taught me, and I know it's taught other people. And sometimes, I think it takes a person's passing for people to kind of just see what it impacts. Like today, I come here and I realize how amazing she was. Like she's one person. She's one person, and she has just touched so many people's lives. So, just want to say thank you, everybody, just for being here and celebrating her life. I love her so much. I love Cookie, I did, and I knew her as Cookie. And I love your sister and the way she talks. Yeah? Huh? I know. So,
nice to see people's faces instead of their backs. My name is Holy Ogunengo Akwe. I'm also known as Marcus Iwana. And I was sitting here trying to remember where I met Alexis, and I think it was at a conference many years ago, and I know that I kept running into her at conferences, and we'd end up getting lunch together. I worked with Alexis on many different projects professionally. We worked on healthcare, we worked on youth issues, and she participated in the San Francisco Human Rights Commission and San Francisco Police Department trainings of police officers. And if you don't think you should get hazard pay for doing something like that, Alexis definitely earned it. And she had this marvelous way, as you all know, of putting people at ease. So these burly officers who would have some kind of idea about who this street woman was, who this tattooed person was, who this person living with HIV was, all of that melted away when she told her stories and she talked about her life with such sincerity and such honesty. And it's those stories that moved hearts and minds in the San Francisco Police Department. So I'll forever be grateful for her smoothing the path in front of me that way. It's clear that she moved so many hearts when I heard the passion of all of you speak about her life. That's a legacy. Those feelings that you're feeling is a real legacy. I want to thank her family for sharing her with us, because she was a treasure and a jewel, both personally and professionally. And I want to remind the community that, you know, whether we look at science and we say that energy is neither created nor destroyed, whether we look at psychology and we say we're carrying the memories, whether we look at our own sense of what spirit might be and we say that spirit is out there, maybe it's any of these things, all of these things, or none of these things, but it's clear by the passion and the love in this room that Alexis is still with us, and will always be with us as long as we're walking. So carry that with you. For those of you who knew and loved her, let that be your solace. For the young ones coming up, walk in her footsteps, because she left a great path for you to walk. Thank you.
At Children's Hospital. She was one of my very first friends there when I started working there. She was hilarious. We just swapped stories about the cheapest place to get the cheapest cute clothes and random strip malls in Los Angeles, where to get the best food for the cheapest in the strip mall or in the mall or wherever. She was a funny person. She cracked me up. She had a couple years, I don't know if you guys remember this, where she was squinting outside. And I was like, Alexis, can you see anything on the wall? Can you see what's being written up here? Do you know what's going on in this movie? Yeah. I know it. And at some point, it was after much cajoling and bothering her about this, she finally went and got glasses. She was living in downtown LA at the point in this high-rise building. She came to work after with glasses. Oh, they're so cute. They got this. You finally can see what's going on. She's like, girl, I didn't even know I had 360 view of Los Angeles in my apartment. So funny, she cracked me up. But when she got on stage, on her pulpit or on her panel or whatever, she was talking about trans rights, all that silliness kind of went aside. She was so smart and eloquent. Oh, powerful. It's great to be going with these. It's your lessons. Good to be better.
My name is Sean, and I also work at Alexis at Children's Hospital. I was coming out at the time, and I was homeless, living out of my car for 6 months. started at Children's Hospital thinking that I would not be able to help anybody. And something that Alexis taught me was as I was coming out, I was really confused about how I was supposed to act, how I was supposed to be. If I was too feminine, too masculine, I didn't know where I was. And for that time in my life, Alexis was my compass. She taught me that I didn't need to reference anything else. I didn't need to look at others and mirror and mimic what they did. She taught me that I had to be who I was. When we worked in Children's Hospital, we were at an outpatient clinic. I hated going to the main hospital because people would look at me. And at that time, yes, I see why people would look at me. I had a blonde mohawk, I was wearing socks on my hands, I was exploring who I was. And I told her that I hated going there. And we were having this conversation, and we rode up on the elevator in the outpatient clinic. And we were in the elevator with a mother and a daughter. And the daughter looked up at us and said, "Damn, you look weird." They got off. Alexis looked at me and said, "You know they were talking about you." And that's something that with her humor, she was able to smooth everything over and reaffirm at the same time. And I'll always remember her for that.
For sharing heartfelt stories. So I want to invite Mason Davis up to the stage.
This has been probably the two most difficult weeks of my adult life. And I actually want to thank Cecilia because I feel today for this time together, an elephant that was sitting on my chest stood up. I can breathe, remembering that actually she is here and will be with us. Alexis is everything you've heard about and more. I met her, I think, in 2000 when she was a fierce trans youth activist. And I was starting to work with folks to create what was FTM Alliance of Los Angeles. And Alexis came on as one of our first founding board members. I don't know trans activism really without Alexis. She has always been there. And I don't know the word to use for Alexis. She was a friend, but she was family in some kind of way. To me, Alexis was supposed to be the future of our movement. She was supposed to have all these plans, and she was supposed to be in these roles. And she was supposed to take over so much of our work that we're doing today. And so to not have her here is really just a loss at so many levels. A week ago, 200 people came to celebrate her life in Los Angeles. People of every ethnicity, every gender, every age. She has moved so many people, so many places, and I hope she knows that. 2 weeks ago, I spent a night with her and her mother at hospice. And while I've had a lot of conversations with Alexis over the years, I don't think I've really connected how many challenges she's overcome to be who she is. And her mom talked about her own attempt to accept and understand Alexis when she was a teen, and how around 16, I think, saying that Alexis decided it was time to leave home in order to really be herself. And that it was the women in Hollywood who taught her what it meant to be a trans woman. Alexis had to leave school, like a lot of our youth, and finish up at an alternative school in Los Angeles. She knows what it's like to not have things that many of us depend on having to be who we are. And yet, even with having the odds stacked against her, she defied all of them. And she turned the grief and the challenges that she faced in life into an incredible energy that changed both profoundly who she was and how she lived in her life, but everybody around her. And we would all be really fortunate to live as well as Alexis did and to impact the people that she's impacted. Somebody talked about the fact that she never gave up. A month ago, I was visiting her in the hospital in Los Angeles with Miguel Martinez, who used to be her boss at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. And Alexis was full of plans. And she was telling me everything we were doing wrong. And how in just a matter of days, she was sure she would get out of the hospital, and she wanted to come and volunteer for Transgender Law Center again full-time in Los Angeles and start a wellness program down there. And I really wish at that time I knew that that might be the last time I was going to be able to have a conversation with her. Because there's so many conversations I still want to have. From how she wants to be remembered to what we should be doing as we confront the work ahead of us.